Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today, I have a subscriber submitted experience that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. Crazy enough, I had gotten 2 emails 2 weeks ago ranging in the same location. The gentleman that I'm going to contact next is actually talking about a similar experience in the same area years apart. Before we jump into this, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Okay, so I had received this email back in September 8th, right after the live stream. Brand new subscriber. She had been at the live stream and really had a lot of fun, she said, but she wanted to share an experience that her friends, and her friend's brother all had shared at different times. Her friend's brother was the one that it centered around. And if you lived in the Redding, California region of 1996, she said that you would recall there had been in roughly May, the end of May, so just starting summer, there had been a fugitive from justice. And it was on the news, it was in the papers. Once again, 1996, end of May, early June. And they said they had been searching for this fugitive in the Mount Shasta area for a couple of weeks. There was no crime mentioned, just fugitive from law enforcement. She distinctly recalls that because her friend's brother had gone camping in the Mount Shasta region, and the family was worried, but then he kept saying, well, they don't even list what his crime was, so it could have been, a stolen car, all the way to, the worst. So her friend's brother had gone out into Mount Shasta region. Apparently he's a little older than them. Really fit guy, really big into CrossFit, running, just, an athletic kind of guy, not footballish or baseballish, but, hiking, kayaking, rock climbing, in my eyes, the athletic things that I like to do. So he was about 5 years older than this young lady that I spoke to. And I ended up talking to her on Tuesday and then last night, to finally get the whole experience from her. Like I said, the email came out on the 8th, and we finally were able to connect on Tuesday, the 24th, and last night, the 26th of September. So apparently, her best friend's brother had gone out camping, and he had camped and hiked that area multiple times. They're right from the Redding area, born and raised, grew up there, and he was particularly fond of an area called Sulphur Springs, and the terrain was less jagged, less dangerous in that area, and he could camp without worrying about too many people bothering him and such. So around maybe the 5th or 6th day, she doesn't recall the exact day, but she knew it was close to a week of him not being heard from. People started to get worried. They ended up contacting law enforcement, and because he was older than this young woman that I spoke to by 5 years, and his sister by 5 years, he was in his early 20s, so 22, 23, somewhere around there. And they said, he's an adult. What do you want? You knew he was going camping. Why don't we wait and see a little bit longer and see? There was no real fear of anything going on. They asked the questions. Did he, have any mental illness? This, and that. And they got a kind of good handle on who he was and what he, So he had been out camping for 2 weeks. And that was just something that he did. Apparently, Boy Scout throughout his life, and just a regular kind of outdoorsy dude. So about 11 days go by, and he gets home, and he is very different. This young woman, she asked me not to use her name. So Crystal is the woman that reached out to me. And her friend called her up and said, hey, my brother is finally home, but you should see how he's acting. He's just very quiet. He's reserved. Apparently he was a joke teller. He was, very hyper. And that's, they used to make a joke, they'd put ADHD in front of his name. And, it probably didn't even have that. He was probably just, very hyper and a man and just wanted to be out in the woods and, just having fun. He was 20 years old. But he had just changed. This whole persona and everything had just changed. So one night, Crystal's friend and her brother and his girlfriend and a couple of friends were all at like a little bonfire in their backyard, just hanging out. And people started to leave, and it was Crystal's friend, her brother, and his girlfriend at the time were present. So it was only the three of them. No alcohol had been consumed. They were just, sitting by a fire, listening to music and hanging out in their backyard. Apparently they had a pretty decent sized backyard for the region where they lived. And he tells everyone, he's like, the sister asks, hey, why are you acting so weird like lately? What's wrong with you? What's going on with you? And he just kind of says, nothing. I don't want to talk about it. And his girlfriend speaks up and says, maybe if you do talk about it, instead of just to me, you can get whatever happened off of your chest, and you won't feel like you're going crazy. Apparently, the girlfriend had really adamantly believed him. He was not prone to making up stories, prone to lying. Once again, hyperactive 20-year-old guy, but very honest. And what he shared with his sister, and then once again his girlfriend, really blew his sister's mind away. That she immediately called Crystal the next morning and said, I think we need to go up to where my brother was and see if we can find out what's going on. So apparently he had been in Sulphur Springs, Colorado, Sulphur Springs, and on Mount Shasta. He had taken the Northgate trailhead up through. So it took him about 2 days to get to where his campsite was, where he was going to camp. And he had just been up there. He set up his camp. He had, his food that he needed. He had everything that he needed. So he got his fire started. He had a little tarp tent, and just in his glory. So the first night at Sulphur Springs is smooth. The trip from Northgate Trailhead up to Sulphur Springs took him about 2 days. On the second day he was there. So that first day hiking in the camp where he camped the first night, nothing happened. It was very quiet. He saw a couple that had been hiking out, just a day hiking, and he said hi to them, and he proceeded to go to where he was going to get. And so he's camping the first night, not at Sulphur Springs yet. No, any kind of craziness. No bad feelings, no silence, just complete calm and tranquility. He gets up to Sulphur Springs, sets his camp up. By the time he had gotten there, it was mid-afternoon, so he had a couple of hours to really set his camp up good, and before dusk even approached. And so he gets set up, gets his fire started, gets his tarp tent set up, and relaxes. He said that probably right around dark, when the sun was gone, dusk had and now it was dark. He said that he had noticed that there were no crickets, no bugs, nothing. Just this really weird and frightening silence. A lot of people call it the Oz effect. And so he's sitting there. He's got some bear spray with him. He's got a flare gun with him. And he didn't carry a firearm. Obviously, it's California. But she wasn't up to date on what the gun laws were in 96. But he didn't have a firearm with him. Just bear spray and a flare gun. So he's kind of looking around his campsite like, all right, it's really quiet. Everything went dead. What the hell? And he stokes his fire a little bit more. and he can hear off to it would be west. He can hear what sounds like a humming, like a mechanical humming. But it's like a strange kind of baffled noise. And he's just like, what in the hell? Maybe someone's coming up on a 4-wheeler or a 3-wheeler. And so he's waiting. He's got a flashlight, not a very great flashlight, 1996. And as soon as the silence hit, it was that way for 40 minutes to an hour. And then just like that, the world started right back up. That humming sound was gone. And so he's like, damn, what the hell was that? Real freaked out. And he makes the decision that, all right, it was coming from the west. I'm pretty much centered at Sulphur Springs. I'm about, he was about 11,000 feet in altitude. I'm going to hike tomorrow and see what's over on this other side here. And apparently it's some rough terrain. No, he was about 9,000 feet, excuse me. Where he was going to go would be 11,000 feet, excuse me. So he makes that decision that's his goal or his plan of action tomorrow is I'm going to go check and see what that humming noise was, because, he had no plans. He was up there. So, he's going to play it day by day and what his adventures are going to be for that day. So that's his now new adventure. I'm going to go and figure out what that sound was. He stays up for a couple more hours because, he wants to make sure that, one, he feels comfortable to go to sleep, and two, that sound doesn't occur again. So now it's about 11 o'clock at night, and he goes to bed. So the next morning he wakes up, and this is all, mind you, this is all him telling his sister and his girlfriend again the experience. Excuse me. He gets up the next morning, has his breakfast, and gets set to go west. He figures, judging on the distance of the sound, he might have, a 2-mile hike ahead of him. But we're talking now terrain that he's going to have to hike through. Just on the outskirts of his campsite, there's a ravine and, some cliff areas that go up in height. So he's like, all right, this is, couple hours, maybe 3-4 hours, and then I'll get back here. So I'll have, breakfast, get back here at around, 4-5 o'clock. I'll bring something to eat for lunch on my way back. But I'll still get back to camp, even if I go 2 miles, long before dusk. So he starts out, he has breakfast, and he starts hiking out. Well, he is not, once again, he's not a person to make up tall tales. He's not a person that was into the paranormal or any kind of, he was a skeptic, hardcore. His sister used to, have weird things happen around their house. And he would, be like, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in that. Stop watching scary movies, and he wouldn't be scared. Now he's walking and he is thinking, he's like, Lemurians. And he's like, why is that name or word in my head? And as he's walking, he keeps thinking about a dream that he had that night before. This person or this thing kept saying, we are Lemurians. We were here long before humanity. We are Lemurians. And he's just hiking and he's like, what the hell is a Lemurian? You know, with no idea what a Lemurian is. This whole time he's hiking out and he's just replaying his dream. He doesn't recall the facial features. He recalls whatever was saying this to him in his dream, that it was humanoid, but oddly different. The arms, legs were different than his and any other person that he's ever met. They were very long, skinny, and would appear to be taller than him, but not by a lot, maybe a foot. So he's 6 foot. Whatever was saying this to him would be about 7 foot in height, but very skinny. And he didn't have any fear of it in his dream, but he just, now this, we are Lemurians and we've been here long before humanity, is replaying in his head. And he's like, what the hell? And he gets to about a mile into his hike and he just gets this really weird, bad feeling that something is going to happen to him. He can feel like he's being watched, and he has now played that dream over and over in his head that he's, you know, he's scared at this point. Like, what is a Lemurian? Why do I have this word in my head? Who was this person in my dream? And, you know, why do I feel like I'm in danger right now? I've been here a few times. I've been here with my dad. You know, we've never had anything strange. His dad used to joke about Bigfoot, and he blew that off even at a young age. That's how much of a skeptic he was. He thought that his dad telling him stories of a Bigfoot being on Mount Shasta, or many Bigfoot being on Mount Shasta, was a tall tale, an urban myth. And his dad emphasized on cannibalistic Sasquatch creatures that will attack, that do eat meat. They are just dangerous creatures. But he'd never seen one, even with his dad. He doesn't know if his dad had seen one to this day, because he's only shared this experience with a literal handful of people. So he gets to about a mile in, and he gets this bad feeling, and he decides, you know what, this isn't worth it. I've been hiking for a couple of hours. I'm kind of hungry. I'm going to have lunch. And he looks at his watch. And his watch is not a digital watch. It is one of those kind of self-wind watches. A mechanical self-wind watch. No battery. And he looks at his watch because he wants to figure out, you know, how long this is going to take. How long have I been hiking? And he looks at his watch, and his watch has, now it tells him that it's like early morning or late at night. So 9 a.m., 9 p.m. And he's like, the sun is out. It's definitely not 9 a.m. because I left after 9 a.m. and it's not 9 p.m. because the sun's out. What the hell is going on with my watch? And he starts walking back, same way he came. He looks at his watch again, because now he's baffled. He's like, and he looks down, and his watch the hands are spinning very slowly, but they're spinning. And he's like, am I near a magnet? Am I near something, that's messing with my watch to, not be able to tell time anymore? Because he knew he didn't touch it. And now he's watching these hands circle his clock face. He's about a half a mile from his camp, and he hears this loud shriek, just this echoing kind of growl. It was bass to it, but it sounded like a very large-lunged woman, followed up by this weird kind of growl. And he stops instantly and looks around like, what in the hell was that? He doesn't stick around, picks up pace and heads back to his camp. And, it took him a couple hours to get to where he was. So it's going to take him a couple hours to get back to where his camp is set up. And during this trip back to his camp, he's catching things out of the corner of his eyes. He's hearing branches breaking. He's hearing things above him in the trees. Just a lot of, almost like something's playing a game with him. Or multiple somethings are playing a game with him, because as he's walking, he catches us off in the woods, but he can hear branches breaking over here, and behind him it sounds higher up. So it's just all around him, and he is very freaked out at this. And he now starts to jog a little bit. Dangerous decision. Thank God at that point he did not hurt himself. He gets back to camp and gets his flare gun out, because he's like, something's out here with me. I don't have a firearm, but I've got a flare gun. And if it's a bear, if it's a mountain lion, I at least have my bear spray and this flare gun. I can at least fight my way out of it if I have to. So he's back at camp, and all of the strange activity around him had stopped right as he could see his camp visibly. He could see his tarp tent. He could see his fire pit and everything. It was like everything just stopped. The noises, the peripheral vision. And he gets to camp, and he's very nervous at this point. He's almost like, it's too late for me to leave right now. I mean, we're 2 days in. I might as well see how the day, the rest of the day plays out. Got 4 or 5 hours before dark. See how it plays out. And if worse comes to worse, leave at night or stay the night and leave first thing in the morning. But I can't, he didn't want to risk heading out at that point. If shit hit the fan, he was ready to go. But if not, he's like, all right, we'll see how everything plays out. And he's on edge the whole night. He's just kind of real jumpy, looking around. And he then eats, goes to bed. He's very calm. He's almost like, well, maybe it was my maybe the noise I heard was a mountain lion. Maybe because I heard that noise, maybe because of the altitude, he's just running maybes in his head. And he goes to bed. He's like, all right, well, it's not as bad as, this early morning, this afternoon. So I'll play it by ear. And he does go to bed. And sometime he does not know, after he'd fallen asleep, he is awoken and he is in this very sterile looking white room. And he is really freaked out. Like, where am I? Is this a dream? In his head, he's like, is this a dream? I was in my tarp tent in my sleeping bag. Now I'm in this white room of, there's nothing in this room. There's a metal bed that he's laying on, and he sits up and he's just looking, and he looks down at the bed to see how far he's off from the ground. And he realizes that there's no legs. So it's this slab of metal suspended in the air, 4 feet off the ground, but held up by nothing on the sides, nothing below. And he's like, what the hell is going on? This is a really weird dream. And as he's thinking this, these two humanoid creatures walk in, and they are 7 feet tall. They look very human, but they have a very strange kind of pointed ear. Not like a fairy's ear, but there's something off with their ear. There's no hair, and they are wearing these white robes. And he's just like, what the hell is going on? This is a really weird dream. But he notices these things are very, tall, gangly. Is this the same dream that I had the night before? And the one humanoid creature says, it says his name and says, we've been waiting for you. We are Lemurians. And it says to him his name, who the Lemurian is, and this is so-and-so. He can't remember, or she doesn't know. He probably remembers the names, but she doesn't know the names, and he won't talk about it. We're talking, 30 years ago. So 20 years ago. And, 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago. So now he's just like, am I dreaming? What is going on? And as he's talking to them, he's in this sterilized white room. These very 7 foot tall, skinny armed, skinny legged, bald, weird eared, wearing white robes are in front of him, and they are communicating with him. And he's talking aloud, but they're talking to him in his head. And all of a sudden the room just kind of morphs into what a underground cave would be, like an underground cavern. But it's carved out. You can tell that it's carved. It's got squares and angles to it. So it is a carved room. It's not just a naturally formed cavern under the ground, but it's carved, and now it's not this fake white sterile room that it just was, but once again this carved. And he's like, what is going on? Where am I? And they just said, we will let you know, you are not in danger. Just, do as we tell you to do, and you will go. And so he's like, okay. And he notices they leave this room, but there's like when they came in, the room was white. They came in, the door kind of just opened. There was no door. It just, and that's what happened on this caved wall. And he's like, what the hell? He gets off this suspended, now it's a rock, like a slab of rock instead of a steel table. He gets off of that and walks to where they just walked out of. When they walked out, he could see something beyond this room. And he's looking, and he said, I distinctly remember looking at the wall, and there was what he believed at the time Native American hieroglyphs and petroglyphs and stuff. But then he starts to realize these aren't Native Americans. These look Egyptian. These look, he's looking at a sphinx. There's pyramids and such carved into this wall. And it's all around. It's like a story in this room. And he's just like, where the hell? He doesn't know how long the time was, but this door opens again, and in comes the one Lemurian that didn't talk to him, says his name mentally to him, and says, we have to go. We have to show you something. And he's walking down this long tunnel. He's not, arrested, or he's not cuffed up. They're not holding him captive, but yet they are. So he's free to walk next to this Lemurian, but he doesn't have any restraints. See, I didn't mean to say arrest. He didn't have any restraints on. But he's walking with this creature. And as they are walking, there are other creatures walking past, walking the same way. And he notices that, not all of the creatures that he's seeing are like these Lemurian things. He's now noticing there's, these reptile looking things. One he distinctly recalled, it looked almost like a dinosaur. It did have a tail, but it walked upright. It was 6 to 7 feet in height, and it had a kind of this jumpsuit on. And he's like, now he's convinced that he's dreaming this. They bring him to this chambered room, and he is now told to sit. Someone will be back to see him momentarily. As he's sitting, he's now really trying to put the mental pictures together, like, where the hell, this isn't a dream. He's pinched himself, and in comes these two reptilian kind of creatures. One is very, very tall, like 8 feet in height, and very aggressive looking. The other is no taller than him, at 6 foot. This room, immediately as these things walk in, change back into this, almost what the other room looked like, this sterile white room. What he was sitting on is, now he had thought it was like a kind of like a cubed rock. Now he looks, and he's sitting again on this sterile steel table. Look down, there's no legs, and he remembers not being able to move. He remembers not being able to fight back. There was just, he didn't on his own lay down, but he did lay down. And he remembers these very strange kind of what he called experiments. They took blood. They had taken probably hair. He has a scar on his back where they had they'd put a needle into his back. And so they were taking DNA. They were taking what made this guy him. And these creatures left the room, and they left him there. And he is now in and out of consciousness. It was a very traumatic experience. These were not like your hospital-sized needles. These were large, his back is killing him because of whatever they stuck in his back was absolutely long and about the thickness of a pencil. And he still has a scar on his back to this day, I guess. So sometime between these things leaving, this Lemurian walks in and he remembers, and he's able to speak again. He's able to move, and he sits up, and he kind of, what the hell is going on? What are you doing to me? Let me go. I have a family. I have a mom. I have a dad. I have a sister. Let me go. I was camping. This Lemurian says, you will be going, says his name again, you will be going, whatever. And when you do, don't be surprised if you are visited in the future. He then is escorted in this tunnel, and they're walking, and he's looking around. There's no rooms. It's just this long tunnel. So when he left that room, that wall again sealed up. There was no doors. There was no anything. And he's like, what is going on? Where am I? Who are you? What is a Lemurian? And this creature proceeds to say, we were here long before the human race. We live in these tunnels. We have for thousands of years. Don't worry. We will not harm you. You will leave this, base. Didn't say base, but you will leave this facility shortly. And as he says this to him, all of a sudden he almost has this kind of flash of light, and the tunnel is now a hallway. It's almost like the curtain got lifted, and now he can see that there are doors with just glass that he can see into these rooms, and these kind of metal doors. So the solid rock is now glass, and he can see through it. And he's just sketched out, because this is something, this poor guy, practical joker, super full of energy, doesn't believe in the paranormal and doesn't make up tall tales. He is so baffled, and he's seeing whatever is going on in this facility. So he's accompanied by this Lemurian, and he's looking at these see-through glassed rooms. And he still partially believes that what happened during those 11 days was he might have fallen and hit his head, but there is no any kind of damage to his brain. There's no, and he's looking and he sees these vats, and this is what makes it hard for him to to believe, because he sees these vats that are suspended in air on the opposite side of these glass rooms. And what he's seeing is these creatures. He sees one thing that set him off and made him think was, he remembered seeing like the pyramids and seeing the Sphinx and such. And he saw this humanoid in a vat, and it had a feline kind of face. It was very powerful looking, and it was suspended upright. So he assumes that it was bipedal. It was rather large. Obviously, he couldn't tell, but judging from what he could see, 7 feet tall, suspended in these vats. He keeps seeing more and more of these vats and different kinds of creatures. What we call crawlers are in these vats. There are rooms without vats that have these creatures, in them by themselves. No kind of medical equipment or whatever, because that's what he's looking at, these vats going, is this a hospital? And he thinks that he had said, is this a hospital? And the Lemurian laughed and said, in a way. And he's now going, holy shit, these are experiments. Why did they take my blood, spinal fluid, bone marrow, everything? They were prodding him, those two reptilians. Not the Lemurians, they were very peaceful. But when it came to the taking of, it was the reptilians that did it. So they get to the end of this hallway, and this door opens, and it looks like a shuttle. And he gets in it, the Lemurian's in it, and it closes. And they go up, and he can see floors, because it's a glass, what appeared to be glass elevator, and he's looking through, and it went up 3 or 4 floors. And he said, where are we? Are we in outer space? Where are we? And he said, the Lemurian, mentally, we are underneath Mount Shasta. We've lived here for thousands of years. We are Lemurian. There is other alien race with us here. We do live side by side. They have their own agenda. We have ours. They get to this one level, and he thinks that he's home free. He's like, all right, sweet. We just went up. How far can I be down? And they are walking down so they walk this way. Now they're walking that way. And as they're walking, he's looking at these glassed rooms again. And what he sees, a couple of different creatures, very strange looking, aquatic looking ones, some that looked like they had gills, other kind of reptilian, more of these crawler creatures, what appeared to be possibly dogmen and feline-like creatures. And they get close to the end of the hall, and there are 2 large rooms that he looked in. They were taller and they were deeper. Because he could see that the floor, you're looking at a glass room, you can see the floor. You can see the ceiling as you're walking by. Ceiling is level with the ceiling that he's in. Floor is level with. But when they get closer to the end, he looks and he sees that the floor doesn't begin right where he is standing. And he quickly scans over, and there's about a 10-foot drop in this room. And it's about 10 feet above the ceiling that he's in. All these other rooms were the same size as the corridor that he's walking down. And what he sees is these two large humanoid creatures that are just absolutely immense in size. He said somewhere between 20 feet, but they were shackled, and they were sitting, and they had their heads down. They're sitting on this floor, and even though that floor is 10 feet below, that's how he got a pretty good estimate of how big they were. Even though that the floor that these creatures are in are not level with the floor he's at, and he's about 6 foot. These humanoid whatever that are chained to the ground, they're sitting like their asses on the ground, their feet are between, their hands are between their feet, and they're shackled, and they can't move. They're huge. And one looks up at him, and he sees it, and he sees this human quality. He sees this kind of help me look in its eyes. And, these two things are sharing this room, this huge room. Because as he looked on this side, you got room. He looks here. This is just absolutely huge. And there's like 3 or 4 rooms as a comparison to this one big room. And he sees this, huge, just grotesque looking creature, giant, shackled, and it looks up at him, and he saw sadness in its eyes. And he stopped, and the Lemurian is walking ahead, and right in his head, the Lemurian said to him, "Continue, whatever name, come with me." And as he did that, as he heard that, this giant creature tries to stand up and and lets out this just booming roar, of anger. And he can't move. He can't stand up because he's shackled to this ground. So his feet are, right touching the ground. His arms are between his legs, and he just screams. He said, "I don't know what these things were chained down with or held down with, but whatever it was, we don't have it on Earth, because this thing should have been able to rip whatever, if it was a normal chain, right out of the ground, rip it in half." Shit's starting to really sink in with, maybe we are in the underground underneath Mount Shasta. Maybe we are here. And the Lemurian, after that huge roar, comes back and has not, the only creature or individual that had touched him up until this point would have been the reptilians that took DNA and whatnot from him. But the Lemurian put his very large hand, and very spindly, on his back and shoulder and said, "You will be fine. You will not think about this night, this day." And the next thing he knows, he's in his tent again. In his tarp tent. So I have bad allergies. That's why I keep hitting pause. My throat is bothering me. You can hear it. And I keep having really to blow my nose. So I apologize. He wakes up and he's in his camp. He looks at his watch. His watch is no longer working. He has no idea of the time, the date. He obviously can see that it's morning. And he's like, "I got to get the hell out of here." He's like, "What the hell did I just, endure? What just happened to me?" And he proceeds to walk or hike his way back out. He left his tarped tent and just brought the necessities that he had with him. You know, his backpack, his knife, his bear spray, his flare gun, which was all there. Everything was there. He had noticed that his fire pit, he checked his fire pit to make sure that the coals, the embers weren't hot. And this is when he started to realize, holy shit, you know, maybe I had been down there for a couple of days. Because when he went to bed, that fire bed was still aglow. You know, should have been some warmth to the, you know, debris in his fire pit. Because at this point, he's thinking, I just had a fucking crazy dream. I saw all these kind of creatures. I saw whatever these things were. These Lemurians, these reptilians, these giant creatures that were chained and shackled. And, you know, whatever. And he starts to walk and he's starting to think. And he realizes his back is sore. His back is really sore. And he looks at his arm. And he's got, you know, what appears to be marks, like injection sites or, you know, withdrawal sites where they took blood and shit. And because these were not regular sized medical needles, you know, we're talking the size of a pencil. And he's just confused. He doesn't know what the hell happened. This is day 9. 2 days later, he's back at his car, and he's back at home in Reading. And that's when he gets home. And he is quiet because he's trying to figure out what the hell happened. And then everyone's like, where were you? You know, you were gone for 11 days. Where were you? His family's like bugging out. His mom, his dad, everyone's just bugging out on him, you know. And he's like, oh, I was camping on Mount Shasta. He doesn't know what else to say because, you know, it'd be like waking up out of a coma. You don't know what the hell happened. You think it was a nightmare. Come to find out, you've been missing for 11 days. During that time, apparently, a few park rangers had gone up in that area to look for him. And they didn't even spot his tent, his tarped tent. The father had said to the police department and park rangers, you know, this is where we'd normally camp. This is where he should be. You know, I'm sure if you go up there, you'd be able to find, you know, we're 9 days in, 8 days in, nothing. He gets home and a couple days go by, and that's now we're back at the fire pit with his sister and his girlfriend. And he tells his sister all this, and she can see the kind of disbelief but pain in his eyes. He's now got tears welling up in his eyes because, you know, he's telling someone other than his girlfriend what he had endured. And he lifted up the back of his shirt and said, look, this is where, you know, they took something from my spinal fluid, whatever. And there was this hole, like, you know, this where they had injected him. Time goes by. His sister tells her friend who contacted me. And I guess about a couple of months after, right before fall, because mind you, there's snow in areas of Mount Shasta that are year round, you know, like it's freaking high up. So they go up there, and the woman that had contacted me, and 96, they're up there looking around, let's find out where, let's find this area where he was taken to. And as they are walking, hiking, looking, and they're not even close to where he was, because he was 2 days in. They're half a day in. They're barely even to where he was. Out of the ever how many 7 or 8 friends that are. So as they're they're pretty much dicking off. They have a plan of, let's go and find out where he was. Let's see if we can find this, opening to where he was taken. One of the kids goes missing. He's 22 at this time. His sister's friends are 16, 17. And one of them goes missing. Mind you, they're a day and a half from where he was. So a long way away. And they're close to this creek that's near where they were. They are calling for him, where the hell is he? And they get out of there. And they send, they contact the police and tell them what happened. We were up there hiking and we were looking for a cave. This is exactly pretty much where we were. Law enforcement goes up there and rangers are there. They're looking for this kid, 16, 17 once again. And one of the park rangers goes missing. For how long? Nobody knows, but at that point, they're all still up there looking for their friend. Their friend then is found, and he had been wherever. They don't know. He doesn't know. He still to this day doesn't know. He had been missing for like 6-7 hours. They're accompanied out. Now they're looking for this ranger. 2 or 3 days go by. And instead of saying that a search and rescue was going on in the Mount Shasta region, closer to the Northgate trailhead, instead of saying park ranger is now missing, they said that there was a fugitive on the run still up there, And to this day, the police have talked about this fugitive prior to him going missing, to this park ranger going missing. So they are still saying that, not now, but during the summer of 1996, there was a fugitive missing, or a fugitive on the run. But there was never a fugitive on the run. Why were they saying it before he went missing? Crystal's friend's brother. And then after this park ranger went missing. So for 2-3 months, you've got a fugitive that had done some crime that the newspapers and the news were not made aware of, just that there's a fugitive up there. Why is that? And apparently, in this area of Redding, people that have lived there for X amount of years and that lived back then will still remember that summer where there was a fugitive in the Mount Shasta region of 1996. That's when she told me this. And instead of, the park ranger story, hey, we're looking for the park ranger, you may see helicopters in this region because now we're looking for, we're up here now, further up looking for this fugitive. why did they use that? Why did they use that? What was the initial reason? And I asked her, I said, well, what was the initial reason for him to be missing? Or that, why did they use that story of there was a fugitive on the run? Do they know? Does the local government know about these Lemurians? And apparently they do. Apparently it's not a secret for the people that live in that area to know that these humanoid creatures lived up there. That hallway, however deep they were, where he was taken, he had gone up 3 or 4 stories or 3 or 4 floors, but he lost consciousness after he'd seen those giant creatures. So they could have been, 3 or 4 more floors. So you're 8 floors down doing genetic experiments like Dulce, New Mexico, Teos, these elaborate tunnel systems that can shift. Is that the eyes playing tricks on you? The Egyptian hieroglyphs in that room, and he still will talk to certain people, his sister, about what he saw that in that that one initial room. And he said part of me thought I was on a spaceship. Part of me, after looking at the hieroglyphs, thought that I was in Egypt in a pyramid. I don't know what those creatures were, the giants, those crawlers. And he's come to terms with what happened to him, but how much mentally did that screw him up? The ranger apparently had been found because a couple of weeks after his 11-day disappearance, that fugitive on the run thing had stopped being talked about. So very strange. Like, was the local government aware of these Lemurians doing kidnapping? That's what she's thinking, that like the pact that is talked about with the aliens in the 40s, where they could abduct X amount of humans to do their genetic experimentation. But, she thinks that's going on there. The government is aware of it. And they wanted to keep people out of that area to keep people safe. And instead of saying, don't go in this area, they said, there's a fugitive out there. Try not to go camping. If you are camping, get out of the area. The feline-like creatures is terrifying. And, I know very little about Mount Shasta and the Lemurians. I mean, I've only heard about them. I have this file right here. This is all on Dulce, all of this information, and they do talk about Lemurians in the Dulce region. But I didn't think anything of Mount Shasta. And apparently there is a huge lore going back to the 80s about these Lemurians living in Mount Shasta. Some kind of alien-like creature. Very strange, very terrifying, very terrifying. And to me, all this shows me is, and everybody knows, so I'm not being blasphemous, but everybody knows that I truly believe in Jesus Christ our Savior. But what if these Lemurians, these aliens, are demons? Or are fallen angels? Or what do you want to call them? And they're using portals underground to go to different realms of hell or space. Who knows? Who knows? Her friend does not, no longer, her best friend that she grew up with, the one that's brother had lost 11 days of his life. She no longer lives in Redding, in that area anymore. She doesn't even live in California. She wanted to get as far away as possible. The brother still does live there. And Crystal is friends with his wife, who was his girlfriend at the time, and periodically talks about what occurred. So it's something he'll never get over with. It's just something he'll never get. It's crazy. It's fucking insane. But if you live in that Redding area of California in 1996, you will remember that for the beginning of summer, right up until the end of summer, they talked about a fugitive on the run with no criminal, whatever. He didn't steal a car. They don't know if he stole a car. They don't know if he shot some guy. They have no idea. It's just fugitive on the run. Stay out of the Mount Shasta area. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. After all, it is your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go. And honestly, what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events are real. This stuff is happening. It's not just happening in Dulce. It's not just happening in Mount Shasta. It's happening in Teos, Groom Lake. It's all over this country and all over the world is their deep underground military bases. So with that, I'd like to thank you once more. Please share this information with those you love and care about, because it may just help save their lives someday. I apologize for my throat and my sinuses. I just really feel like crap tonight. Allergies suck. So with that, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.